Hey, good day, everybody. My name is Dennis Sheltra. I am a certified revenue cycle executive. I'm out of Eugene, Oregon. Go Ducks! If you've ever been to Eugene or Oregon in general, beautiful place to live. I live nearby the McKenzie River, and after spending 25 years in Fresno, I had the opportunity to move to Oregon and have not looked back. It's been awesome. But my job is to take large data sets and analyze them, make sense out of it, look for trends and follow it over time, and then report back to my employer, who are a bunch of radiologists. I work for a large imaging center here in Eugene, radiology practice, hospital-based and an imaging center. And there are a lot of moving pieces to it, whether it's X-rays, CTs, MRs, whether it's the payers, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, et cetera, Medicare, and then basically take that information, all of that number, payments, collections, refunds, hate refunds, refunds are no fun, and make usable sense out of that. And how I do that, for the most part, is the power of Microsoft Excel. So my job today is to really introduce you to Microsoft Excel, assuming that for the most part you have not worked with Microsoft Excel, and now you're in a position that requires that you're going to be getting spreadsheets, and you're going to need to know a little bit of how to use the data and what am I looking at, how do I turn that data into usable analytics. No doubt it's a little bit daunting when you look at something like all of that, if you will. And now you're basically asked to go forth and analyze. So let's start with the basics on Microsoft Excel here. Behind me is my family. They're a little blurry at the moment, I know. My granddaughter right there. Okay, good. You guys get it. And more about my family later after we teach you about Microsoft Excel for sure. So let me move this a little bit and kind of get me out of the shrink me down a little bit, and I think I'll just park me over here for the moment. So what you're looking at is day one of the of a spreadsheet. What is Microsoft Excel? What can you expect, and how is it set up? What do I do with it? This is a shot in the arm. This is a beginning. If assuming that you've never opened Microsoft Excel before, or you've seen it, now all of a sudden your employer is asking you to take a hard look at something and report back. So let's just start with the basics of Microsoft Excel. Each one of these individual little squares here, or rectangles, are called cells. And inside that cell can be any kind of data, if you will. And these cells are targeted by columns and rows. For example, this one is an F8, F here, and then 8 here. Again, just putting some data in here. Each of these cells have a number. If you kind of take a look up here for just a moment and you see that I click around, it changes. If I want to get to a cell, I can put in, for example, B5 and enter, and it'll take me right to that cell. I don't use that very often, but it is helpful to sort of navigate and know where you're at sometimes, especially if you've got 500,000 lines and you're trying to add and sum and subtract, etc. But the important piece about that is that Excel is broken down into individual cells where they put data. I'm going to just share this screen for just a moment here, and each one of these cells have data in it. These are headers, if you will. We're going to come back to that in just a moment, but it's important to understand that Excel is broken down columns, A through all the way through X, column X, F, C. Let's see if I can get there. I can't. That's okay. Far right, and then all the way down here to the bottom is 1 million lines if you look right down here. So Microsoft Excel is built 1 million lines down and maybe 3,000 to the right. I'm not sure, but A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then you got A, B, all the way through X, F, J, column X, F, J. You never use it. You're pretty much going to stay within, I don't know, maybe 25 columns, if you will. At any given time. How come? Because the data gets so spread out this way, it's not practical for anyone. It's great for data, just putting stuff, numbers, and then taking those numbers and making sense out of it. But for the most part, this discussion really starts with making sure that that Excel, it starts with column, row A, column A, and then numbers like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down to a million. So anytime you click in the cell here, you'll see this number change over here. But bottom line, it's a grid for data. And I think you pretty much knew that, so I'm not going to get into anything more than that. It's pretty obvious. You can adjust these cells, and you're going to need to do that by clicking on the right or left side of it. On the right side, we'll do column E. If I grab this one over here, it'll do column D and drag it. All I'm doing is holding the left mouse down and dragging it. I'm going to undo that with Control Z. Control Z is undo. Same thing over here. I can make the columns bigger over here by grabbing that line. I can grab 3 or 4 lines at the same time and make them bigger like that. I'm going to undo that, take it back to where we were. But the rows and columns and cells is really a starting point. Any of these cells, if you right click inside these cells, are going to have a number of options, things that you're going to be familiar with, such as cut and copy and paste. A lot of different options in Excel that we'll talk about briefly, but know that for the most part that these cells can be formatted, and you can change the font and the highlight. You can make it look any way you want, really, borders and thick borders, and you can put fill in there, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But right-clicking on these cells give you a lot of options, some of which we're going to go through. But you'll play with it when you get your first spreadsheets or when you start getting data that you can work with. You're going to have to toy around with it a little bit, but right-clicking gives you a number of options. And then up here, when you right-click, brings up a formatting option. Do I want this to be dollars? Do I want the font to be bigger or smaller, etc.? And we are going to go through some of that. So again, columns in rows and cells, that's starting point, okay? Put data in here. Now I'm going to jump back to my analytics page right here. So, you know, what does Excel do? I mean, what does it do? Why did my voice crack there? I'm not sure, but okay. What does Excel do? I mean, Excel basically, and I've got a very simple thing here. I've got a Blue Cross and Health Net and some contracted payers. How many procedures were done? How many charges? How many adjustments were taken? What did we collect? And so here's our data, if you will. This stuff up here is called headers. I can highlight the whole thing over here. A lot of different headers in this practice data that I've got here: physician name, month of service, that type of thing. But again, Excel will take any of this data over here. And for example, we want to know for the money that we brought in, $752, and they did 5 procedures. What is our collection per procedure for Blue Cross in this study? And so what we can do is create a formula. Up here, it kind of shows you exactly what the formula is. It's E6 divided by B6. And again, if you use the rows and columns, you can see that E6 right here divided by B6 right here. Again, B6 is up here. You can return the value, basically taking $752.14 divided by 5, and you come up with $150.43 per procedure. Now, for the heck of it, how much adjustments did I take compared to charges? And that's very simply the sum of adjustments and collections in this particular case. So I can say, look, add up D6 and E6, and then divide it by the number of charges. And you can see that it's 75.9%. Now, notice this is dollars. This is a percentage over here. And that's all the way that things can be formatted. I can use that. I can format those cells up here, or I can right click and say, I want this to be dollars, or right click, I want this to be a percentage. And then you can say how many decimal points do you want it to be, et cetera. But for the most part, what we want to show you, again, it has to do with cells, columns, and rows, and just kind of what Excel can do. It simply is a spreadsheet, a calculating system that allows you to pull out analytics and make sense out of data, if you will. So for HealthNet here, my net collections, my collections per procedure is $261. And again, I'm taking the money that I brought in, divided by the number of procedures, and you can see it's $261.34. That's a very useful number. You can take a look if you've got large data sets and say, okay, what was HealthNet paying me last year for these 4 procedures. How has it changed? Why has it changed? And so Excel will allow you to do that year over year. But more importantly, the power of Excel really has everything to do with taking numbers and inserting formulas, adding things up, dividing them, coming up with percentages, if you will. Anything you can think of, essentially. You can round them up and down, get an average, if you will. And so Excel allows you to do that. And again, here's sort of my data set down here, large data set. And you take, like, what can I do with all of this? Well, we're going to show you in a moment some of what Excel can do for sure. So just again, kind of acclimating you to Microsoft Excel in general. This is called the ribbon up here. This large area at the top is called the ribbon. And I'm going to kind of highlight the ribbon by taking a look at this, what's called the quick access toolbar. And I'm going to show that above the ribbon. And if you notice, it popped up here at the top, and it is above the ribbon. And so if I right click in here and say, show the quick access toolbar below the ribbon, the whole point of that was to say, this is the ribbon, this is the quick access toolbar. And again, sort of beginning to familiarize yourself with how Excel is set up. The Home tab and the File tab are ones that you use all the time. The Home tab is typically the default tab. It always shows up first when you open up Microsoft Excel. File over here, if you click on that, more than likely you're going to be familiar with the fact that it says you can save and print and share all of the things that you may or may not be familiar with from, for example, Microsoft Word, or a lot of browsers have that, if you will. So we use File for printing and sharing and emailing and opening up new worksheets. But for the most part, you're going to work in Home, and Home has a lot of features that you're going to use most frequently. For example, cutting and pasting and copying. You're going to be doing that all the time in Excel. You're going to be able to change your font and make your font bigger or smaller, depending on a number of different factors. And you're going to be able to change the font name. Nothing too unfamiliar there. Bold, italic, etc. You're going to be able to put some fill in here. You can see that there's some yellow over here. I'm just going to highlight this, right click, and I'm going to change that to purple. Well, it's not purple, but I think you know what I mean. Orange? What is that? Yeah, it's orange. I told you this is going to be fun. I don't, so I'm going to undo that and take that fill out of there. But again, that's how fill works. And then you can change the font color. If I were to highlight all of this and change that, it's going to go to red for sure. I'm going to just take it back to black. Again, this is the Home tab. As we kind of make our way across here, we can do things like center. For example, I'm going to highlight this entire row here, and I'm going to say, you know what, let's justify it to the left. You can see that it moved everything to the left in that cell. I actually pretty much like keeping everything centered for the most part, but there are clearly going to be times that you're going to want to make this less left justified, if you will. Sometimes you want all of this information to be right on the bottom. And so these alignments, if you will, are available in the Home tab. And as we make our way across, you can wrap the text. If I make this really big, you can see that charge adjustments now fits in one cell. If I make that cell smaller, it wraps it automatically because I've selected wrap the text. Merge and center is kind of cool. It allows me to take 2 or 3 cells, and I'll just do like this, and I'll say merge and center. It's going to say, okay, we're going to get rid of, we're only going to use the left-hand side. And you can see that it took these 2 cells and now made it 1. That's merge. Probably not the best example, but again, as we work our way across the Home tab here, that's an example of merge, and I've just unmerged that, merge and center. Here are the number formats. For example, do I want currency? Do I want this to be a date, a percentage, a fraction, scientific, text, et cetera, et cetera. Now we've got some formatting that we can do. Formatting really has everything to do with the color of these cells, et cetera. And then you've got some other, custom already set up for you. For example, in my header, if I select that one, If I select there, then it automatically does what this is pre-programmed for. I don't use that a lot. It's really handy, even up here, if I were to go like this, and I'm going to undo that. It's pretty handy in general. I don't use a lot of it. Insert and delete cells and rows and columns are pretty handy. Auto sum, for example, if I want to add up all of my charge adjustments in this particular cell and I hit auto sum, it's going to pretty much assume what I want. And if I enter, it's going to add that up. So now, just to take advantage of some of the things that we've just talked about, I'm going to make that font a little bigger by clicking up here. I'll make it a little wider so that we can see it. Maybe put some pretty background in there. Again, the purple. Kidding. So that's auto sum. Fill and clear and sorting, we'll talk a little bit more about, but that's your home tab. And something that you use all the time. This is your quick access toolbar. And if you email me, and I'll put my email up in just a moment, so I will send you this, what's called a user interface. And you can have a lot of these presets already right at your fingertips, right here, ready to go from here to make that bold, or I'm sorry, put a border on that, et cetera, et cetera. Here's auto sum, pivot tables. We're not going to talk too much about that. But this quick access toolbar is really important. I'm a big fan of that. And as I look at people using Excel, they don't use, they don't have their quick access toolbar built. And that's something I would encourage you to do. But for now, let's just take a look at some of the other tabs that are available in Microsoft Excel. We've got insert. We can insert a pivot table or tables, pictures. We can insert certain shapes. Sometimes it's important for me to put an arrow in there and make sure that the physicians notice that. Okay, no big deal, but that's in insert, and I've inserted a shape. You've got other objects and three-dimensional models that you can put in there. You can insert a chart. Here are some recommended charts. We'll talk a little bit about that. Maps. You can link websites. You've got a text box, which I use all the time. I'm going to click here. A text box is nothing more than free-form text. Hello, what up? Of course, if I could type, hello. This is a text box. You guys are probably familiar with text boxes in Microsoft Word, but it's also available in Excel and very handy. I use that quite a bit. So that is the insert tab. If we go to the page layout, as we're getting ready to print, you might want to change the orientation to landscape. More on that later. The page layout allows you to add grid lines or print the grid lines. The grid lines are these things over here. Do you want those when you print? Probably not. That type of thing. Again, this is page layout. Formula tab has a lot of different, again, the auto sum, a lot of different functions that we can possibly use, including some of the most recently used ones. Here are financial formulas. Here are logical formulas. Here are text formulas, date and time, lookup, math and trig, and then simply more functions, like you're kidding me. But there are literally thousands of formulas that you can use in Excel. And a formula, if I go back to this example of $150.43, that formula is right up here in the formula bar, okay, is E6 divided by B6 to that 150. That formula is found in all of these formulas up here. And this is a very simple one. It's nothing more than that divided by that. But you can add, subtract, get averages. You can do date and time. You can do different text type things, financial, who knows, duration, effects, etc. But that's where you're going to find a lot of your formulas. And for the most part in Excel, depending on what you're doing, you're going to be using a lot of averages, sums, additions, percentages, things like that. You're not going to be doing a lot of real heavy hitting when you first get started. You'll definitely work your way into it. So this is the formula bar. The data bar really has a lot to do with the large data sets like this and the way that you can set it up. I'm not going to get into too much of that. I think for the most part, the most popular thing in data is sorting data alphabetically, etc. You can do some reviewing, spell checks, etc. You can protect the workbook in here. View, what do you want to see? Do you want to see page break view. How do you want to view it? Page break view is kind of a printing view, if you will. And this tells you page 1, etc. I'm going to go back to normal. Okay. And so that's under view, and then analyze really gets into some very specific ways to look at data. You can slice it. I like slicers a lot. Very handy tool in general. Help. Yeah, help is you call me. That's what you do. You call me. Okay. So these are the different tabs that are available in Microsoft Excel. You're going to pretty much stick with home. If you find yourself going to these tabs a lot, then build your quick access toolbar. And just to show you what that means, I can right click on that and say customize quick access toolbar. And I'll usually go to all commands, and then anything that's available inside of Microsoft Excel can be added by clicking here and adding it over here. This add over here is this bar up here. It is the quick access toolbar. And even you can add things like separators, which are put spaces between some of these so that it doesn't get really too cramped in there, if you will. So this is the quick access toolbar. When you first open up Excel, it's usually located above the ribbon, and usually there's like 3 or 4 things: save, undo, auto sum, and that's it. And so what you want to do is to right click and bring it below the ribbon like I've done here, and then to begin to build your quick access toolbar so they're not always trying to scroll through these tabs up here. They're right at your fingertips. And by the way, if I'm in my ribbon here and I scroll, you'll see that it does go back and forth, no problem, etc., like that, etc. There we go. Cool. So I think you guys get that there for sure. So there's a tremendous amount of information in here. I would encourage you to just tinker around with it. Eventually, again, if you find yourself going to a lot of these tabs quite frequently, you're taking your mouse and you're moving your cursor up there. You're selecting a click here. Just put it in your quick access toolbar, and it'll be a one-click, one and done type of thing for sure. So that's the sort of the structure of Excel in general. As you're looking at it, you've got columns and you've got rows, you've got cells, you've got data in your cells, and you begin to sort of do analytics and begin to review and provide usable feedback to your employer on what the heck they're looking at. What is my net collection per procedure? What are my adjustments? What's my collection rate? What's a collection rate? Well, my collection rate, and I'll use this example down here. Same example as up is here, but $752 collected on 1,500 billed. That means I'm getting 47 cents on the dollar. So if your employer says, hey, how are we doing on Regents on those 5 procedures I asked you to look at? You can say, you know what, my collection rate is 47 cents on the dollar. I'm getting about $150 per procedure. And they're going to go, you must have seen one of his videos. Yes. No. So you begin to look really, really smart when you have this type of power of the data in front of you that you can extract and make useful. Some more things sort of about the functionality or the the structure of Excel. If you look down here, you see you've got sheet 1 and analytics. Those are different sheets. If I want to add more sheets to Excel, I can just click on this little plus sign, and you can see that sheet 3, sheet 4, sheet 5, sheet 1 is a blank over here, and then here's my analytics. These sheets can be linked together. You may have some data here, and you want to add these two different sheets together on another sheet. You can do that. I'm not going to show you here because we're really trying to keep this simplified, making sure that as you begin, that you at least have some familiarity with what Microsoft Excel can do. These sheets down here, if you right click on them, you can do things like change the tab color. No big deal. I can delete them. One of the things I can do is I can hide them. Sometimes I just want to hide them. For example, I want to give my physicians a report, but I want to hide all the data. They don't need to be looking at all the data down in here, if you will. Okay, that's for me to work with. So I'll give them the final report, and then I'll hide the data if they want to see the data I'll tell them where it's at. But sometimes these tabs down here, it's better that you just hide some of the stuff in general. And you can do that by right-clicking and going hide. And if you need to unhide, you can just pull it back out very simply like that. So again, the whole idea of this is to get a feel for Microsoft Excel and what it can do. So let's try to play with this a little bit and just kind of say, okay, what usable information, let's come up with some formulas of our own. So one of the things that you're always going to pretty much need in Microsoft Excel is you're going to need what's called headers. I mean, you have to know what this information is. And up here, as you can see, we pretty much have this already formatted. So just for the sake of just trying to make this a short video and again get you familiar with Microsoft Excel, I'm going to copy this by hitting Control C and then Control V. I'm just going to paste these headers. Okay, so let's say that we wanted to do some totals here, and I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to type in the word totals, TOTALS, totals. Now I'm going to click in this cell. I'm going to right justify that we move it over. I'm going to make it bold. I'm going to change this to, I don't know, let's see here. I like Arial black. Where is that at? Oh, there we go. Something like that. And again, for example purposes only, I'll make the font bigger if I want to make that a nice orange color. I don't know why that keeps coming up, but we'll use that for sure. So now here's your totals. And so what can I do? I can click in this cell and I can come over here to my auto sum, which is on the home tab, or I can go right to here on my quick tab and I can click that. And Microsoft assumes that it thinks it knows what I want to do. And if I don't want to do that, then then you very simply click in the cell that you want to sum, and then you can hold it down and go all the way to the bottom, and let's just do it. Okay, hold it. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Notice in my formula bar, sorry, we're down to B1014. If I go Control Shift and arrow down, Excel knows that I want to get to the bottom of 8,000 lines. Okay, so we went from whatever we were at 1,000 to 8,000 just by hitting Control Shift and arrow down. It's a keyboard trick. More on that in another video. But if now that I have that, I can hit enter. And you can see that we're talking about 45,000 procedures. How come we did a sum of B24 to B816, and we got 45,561 procedures. So I'm going to make that a little prettier. I'm going to right click in here. I'm going to put a comma in there. I don't want that to be a decimal point. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger here. And maybe I'll put a little one of these double borders around there. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. So now that I've done that, I want to know what my sum of charges are. So one of the things you can do with Excel is that it knows that if I were to click in this cell and grab this little button right here and drag it over one time, it knows that I want to add up column C24. If I click over here, it's B24, but it intuitively knows that if I drag that formula over one, that it's going to make those cell adjustments and those formula adjustments for you. For example purposes, I'm going to do it one more time. It's going to take a look at all my charge adjustments and notice that it now changes it to D24 to D8116. And then I'll just continue through collections. So now we've got a total summary of all of my procedures, charges, charge adjustments, and collections. And now I can begin to sort of play with it. For example, what is my collections per procedure? The way to do that is I'm going to hit an equal sign, which starts the formula. If you see, I point to it. It's pretty funny. You guys can't see that. But here's my equal sign over here. And I can take my collections, if you will, and then divide it by my total number of procedures. And what you come to find out is I get 59.28 blah 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 dollars per procedure. So per procedure. That's how much money that I make per procedure. Now it's a little bit funky format, so I'm going to go up here to, I'm going to go up here to my home tab, and I'm going to click on the dollar sign. And notice it changes it to a dollar sign. It's in a parenthesis format. How come? Because it is a negative number. How come? Because these collections are negative. So you've taken this negative divided by a positive, you're going to get a negative number. Okay. One way to fix that, and some of the things that you can do with Excel, is I can go up to my formula bar here and just put a negative sign in there. Again, it's algebra, nothing more than a -1 times E21 divided by B21. So it just changes that to a positive number. I think you guys get that for sure. And now I want to make that $1. And I want to make that big, etc. Maybe I want to right click and let's put this another different color in here. And now I'm going to drag my arrow down here so that the physicians go, oh, we get $59 per procedure based upon the data set that I'm looking at. Okay, so that's an example of sort of the power of Excel and what Excel is used for. And a lot of it is the formulas that you're going to be using are things like, again, divided by and add, subtract, etc. If you didn't pay attention in algebra class, you might want to go back and take another look at it. Now, this stuff is pretty self-intuitive. I mean, adding and dividing, you'll pretty much pick up on that right away. So Excel allows you to take this large number of 8,000 lines of data set, all these crazy charges, and begin to make sense out of it. And that's exactly what we've done here for sure. So let's take a look at another example, kind of show you the power of Excel and what it can do. I'm going to take this little data set here: physician name, month of service, modality, and location. And I'm going to highlight that by dragging my mouse left and right. And then I'm going to highlight the whole thing. And here I go again, holding the mouse down. And a shortcut on Excel is Control Shift and arrow down. Will get you to the bottom of the list. And notice that it highlights everything down to line 8,000 again. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over here to Insert, and I'm going to do Pivot Table. However, I'm going to show you, I'm going to use my Quick Access toolbar here. And I've got my Pivot Table icon selected. It's saying, do you want to do a pivot table on a new worksheet? And I'm going to say yes. Now, what's happened is it has taken this large data set here, and it's going to pivot the data and manipulate the data, which is nothing more than compacting the data. And so here I've got all these physician names. I've got the location, I've got the modality, and I've got the month of service that they ordered the exam on. And I've made a pivot table out of it, as you're about to see. So I'm not going to teach you pivot tables, but I want to show you sort of the power of Excel. So let me move my little picture box over here somewhere. So now what can we do? If I were to take the location and click, notice that it would identify 2 locations. Now remember, if you come back over here, you've got 8,000 lines of location here. You have no idea all of the different locations. Well, through using pivot tables, it's really compacted it down to 2 locations. Okay, so you're able to take all of that data and begin to compact it and make it user-friendly and practical, so that you're not trying to look at 8,000 lines and going, I have no idea what I'm looking at here. So by pivoting the data, by manipulating and compacting it, you simplify it. Now let's continue to do this. I'm actually going to take a little bit, I'm going to go a little bit of old school here, and not going to get into it too much here, but I'm going to turn this into a classic looking pivot table. There's newer ways to do it now, but this is easier to show you exactly what I'm doing. So if I were to take again, here's my locations. If I were to take my month of service and drop it in here, you begin to see that I only have 7 months. By the way, if you look up here in the upper left-hand corner, where you see my formula or my cell, we talked about, for example, D13 up here, upper left-hand corner. Notice that when I highlight that, it tells me how many columns I have there. That's very handy sometimes to pay attention to that. for a lot of reasons. As you get used to Excel, when you drag your mouse like that, you want to know how many columns that you have for formulas and other things like that. More on that later. But jumping back to the power of Microsoft Excel and compacting data and pivoting data, you can see that I've got two locations here. I've got 7 different months of service. Okay. I want to take, I want to know at each one of these campuses what type of modality was performed. All right, so I've got CT, DEXA, fluoroscopy, mammography. But what I want you to see is the power of Microsoft Excel and pivoting to take that data, these 8,000 lines of data right here, and begin to compact it. Here's my locations. Here's my modality. Here's my month of service. And it begins to put it in a format that now really becomes powerful, really allows you to see what the heck is going on. Now, I'm actually going to drop in something like the modality again, and I'm going to drop it into this value here. Now, what I'm doing is I'm taking this modality and I'm just dropping it in there. And what it's doing is it's counting each one of those little individual modalities over here. 1, MRI 2, 3, 4, etc. 5. It's counting that, and it's popping it in there, and it's pivoting it based upon month of service, based upon the location, and based upon the modality. So in December 2019, we did 806 CTs at McKenzie River campus. If my physicians say, hey, how many mammograms we do at the U of O in December, I can say we did 328. And they're like, dude, you're good. I'm like, yeah, it's all me. But again, the idea is to kind of show you the power of Microsoft Excel and the data compression that it can do, called pivoting and pivot tables. This is not a lesson in pivot tables. It's really a lesson in acclimating you to Microsoft Excel. And I have a feeling right now, as you're looking at some of this pivoting and kind of taking this very simple data set, 8,000 lines of stuff, and begin to compact it, that you're starting to get excited about Excel, correct? Am I wrong? I could be me. It might be me, but no. But I suspect you're like, oh my God, no idea that these computers can do this. And I mean that nicely. But if you haven't worked with Excel, and you begin to see the ability of Microsoft Excel to take data and make it practical, net collection per procedure, collection rates, how much money am I getting from here and from this location, et cetera, then you begin to see how important Microsoft Excel it will be in your day-to-day work life. And it's really, really fun to dive into it, especially if you're going to be working with Excel quite a bit. So many good YouTube channels that really teach Excel, etc. My job right here is to get you acclimated to Microsoft Excel so that you have some familiarity with it. And I'm hopefully I'm accomplishing that. I talk fast. And I want to keep your attention, so forgive me. But again, the power of Microsoft Excel in taking large data sets. We're going to do this one more time and actually use some numbers now. So here's all my payer groups. Here's, again, the procedures, charges. Here's my totals that we played with earlier. I'm going to highlight these 5 headers right here, Control Shift and arrow down so that I highlight my entire area. I'm going to take that right into pivot table once again. I'm going to go old school here and change it to, again, something I think is easier for folks to understand. So here, let's demo this one more time. Large data sets. I got to make some sense of it. Now I can, for example, depends on what I want to look for. The doctors say, look, what is my collection rate on my payer groups? Okay, now I've got, again, 8,000 lines. I take payer group, I drag it over here. And now it is broken down, all of these 8,000 lines right here, into basically 8 or 9 different payer groups. And I'm just going to highlight this. We've got 14 here. So what is my collection rate? Well, I've got charges of 20 million. I'm actually going to click in here. I'll click on column B and I'll make that dollars, 20 million. Okay. And then I'm going to say, what were my collections on there? Now, when I do that, notice that Microsoft Excel adds another column. Okay. It just, when you insert this, and I'll just throw adjustments in there, all of a sudden, you've got a tremendous amount of data right here. In fact, let me just do the whole thing. You've compacted 8,000 lines of data to this 14 by 4 Excel spreadsheet that you can now use to figure out what the heck are my collection rates. Again, the power of Excel, compacting data, making sense out of it. So very quickly, if I were to say hit the equal sign, notice that up here in the formula bar, the equal sign pops in there. My collection rate is, well, I'm making $68 on 165,000. That's a problem. So let's change that into a percentage. I'll click my percentage signal here. My collection rate is negative 0.04. Let's get rid of that negative sign by putting a negative over here, and just to make that a positive number. Now, that's not a very good collection rate. That's less than 1%. And if you jump over here to commercial, it's 148,000 divided by 1.2 million. Now, notice that when I drag this down, that it automatically scrolls the formula too. Okay, starting with C5 to B5. Okay, C6 to B6. Now, if I go back up here to the starting point and I double click on this, Excel will highlight the cells, and it actually color codes it. It's really cool. Highlights the two cells over here, and so that's my formula. And then if I bring that down, Microsoft Excel will know to carry that formula all the way to the beginning, and it will adjust it. So if I click on here, you can see that it's making a move there. It's kind of cool if I do this, and then this, and then this, and then this. You can see, oops, let me back up here, and then that, then that, then that, etc. I think you get it. But most importantly, Microsoft Excel, as you hold this down, and I grabbed again, I'm just going to clear all this out of here for the moment. Click on that cell, grab the little button right there and drag it down. Microsoft Excel automatically adjusts because it knows you start with C5 and you drag it down. Now you want C6 divided by B6. So if my physicians go, hey, Dennis, what's my collection rate on Medicare? I'm going to say it's 9.5 cents on the dollar, 9.5%. What's my collection on Blue Cross? It's 18%. How come 333,000 divided by 1.7 million in charges? What's my entire collection rate with all of my payers? It's 13 cents on the dollar, or 2.7 million divided by 20.7 million. So again, the power of Excel to compact the data and make it very useful. Now, I'm going to just sort of, again, blow your mind here a little bit. I'm going to take, let's see here. Let's do something fun for a second. I'm going to go back over to my analytics spreadsheet. I'm going to go back up to the top. I'm going to Control Shift and arrow. It takes me to the top of this list. I'm actually going to add in the physician name over here. I'm going to copy this and then kind of go over here. I'm going to right click and then insert copied cells. Do I want to shift it to the right or down? I want to shift it to the right. Now we've inserted the physician name inside of this this data sheet. So I can come back over here to the spreadsheet I was working on, and I can say refresh. And notice now my physician name pops up in here. So just for the heck of it, I'm going to pop that in over here. And as you would expect to see, that now my charity care and commercial and contracted is now broken down by physicians. The numbers don't change. The sum numbers that we were just talking about earlier from a collection rate perspective, those totals don't change. But now it's broken down by individual physician. Okay. the power of Excel in compacting data. So that's where you're going to get to at some point, where you're using Microsoft Excel to take in all of this information. Maybe you've got invoices out there, people owe you money. How much money are they paying me? What are they behind? You can subtract one invoice from the other, etc., and you begin to make sense out of it. So so I'm gonna stop there. All things considered, we could ramble on for forever on Microsoft Excel. The point of this is to give you a shot in the arm on what Excel is going to eventually be doing for you, how it's set up, how do you make formulas, and how do you make a pivot table, how do you compact that data. All of that is going to come in time, and you'll enjoy working with Excel. And believe me, the sooner you master Excel, the sooner you're going to jump ahead of your colleagues. It's a skill set that you can take with you wherever you go. And those folks that know Excel and understand Excel will, again, leapfrog over their other colleagues. But it really gives you a very unique skill set that is valuable to an employer who knows you're not afraid of, for example, data, or if they can ask you questions like what's my collection rate, how much am I getting per widget, that you'll be able to do that. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. That's Microsoft Excel from a starting point A to Z. And I'll drop in my email address up here. If you have any questions, feel free to call me or email me. But thanks again for rambling through this with me, and have a great year. Good luck in your new job, and enjoy Microsoft Excel. It's really a powerful tool. All right. Hey, take care, friends. Thanks a lot. Bye.